We are a quarter of the way already through this 2024-2025 college football season. The Bearcats sit at 2-1. They are still at home this weekend. They're going up against the New Mexico State Aggies, who are 1-2 on the season. But for Sam Houston, this is the Conference USA opener, and there's a lot to discuss because this could be a more interesting game despite what the lines and the odds say. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sam Houston Sports Talk. I'm Collin Neill Luke Scott. Luke, you were kind of talking about it off air a little bit. You're kind of a little bit worried, it seems like, about this matchup. Last year New Mexico State defeated the Bearcats 27-13. It was one of the worst losses the Bearcats took last year. Of course, we all know what last year was. Sound like a broken record saying this, but lots of one-score games. But it was just one of those games where the Bearcats definitely were getting outplayed by the other team. But this is different this go around. New Mexico State, a very weird team. Sam Houston, a much improved team. But and with how the Bearcats are playing, that doesn't mean that you can already go ahead and chalk it up as a W if you are a Bearcat fan.
Yeah, it is a very interesting spot, Colin. You're coming off a very successful non-conference schedule. I kind of want to talk about that here in a little bit, but yeah, New Mexico State's a weird team. Th Last week they got blown out against Fresno State, but the week before they probably should have beaten. I mean, they were definitely the better team than Liberty 2 weeks ago. They should have won that game. They were up multiple scores going into halftime in the third quarter, and then just kind of fell apart, giving up a few touchdowns there in the fourth to the conference favorite, right, to Liberty. So it is a weird spot, especially with also looking at Sam with NRG next week against Texas State. It's just a very peculiar spot that you like your chances because you have a veteran team, but you're still worried just because of kind of the optics and also that team you're gonna be facing against. So I think it's gonna be a really good game. Worried, I don't know if is the best word to say it, but maybe cautious.
Well, they're not just facing the Aggies themselves, they're also facing some familiar faces. Defensive coordinator for the Aggies is, of course, Joe Morris. The linebackers coach is Jared Hensley, both former Sam Houston coaches from this past season and years before. They're also facing some players, DeMarcus Crosby and DeCarrick Cobbs. They're on the defensive side of the ball. I just kind of wonder, Luke, because it's always this same question that gets asked whenever a coach is facing, or a coach and his team are facing ex teammates, ex coach mates. Do you think New Mexico State does have a slight advantage with Joe Morris as a defensive coordinator, or do you think that kind of thing is kind of a mute point?
Yeah, it just kind of depends. Obviously, we know Joe Morris a lot. We know kind of what his schemes are, kind of what's his philosophy towards coaching, and that rubs off on players. And a lot of these guys that are on our defensive, side of the ball know what Joe Morris wants to do. He also knows what our offense likes to do, and a lot of the player personnel. And I know we have a different quarterback. Quavez Humphreys didn't play last year, but he did kind of still see him. It's a lot of more of the deeper things, situational football that you might have to give the upper hand there to Joe Morris, but also we know what he wants to do. On the flip side of things, what kind of packages he likes to run and have out there when it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, mid downs, even first down. I feel like it's kind of a wash, and Coach Keeler kind of talked about that in the press conference this week. But um, it's an interesting spot, and we're nothing but thankful to him for what he helped. He helped us last year tremendously. I mean, we know how great this defense was And a few of those players that are on New Mexico State, you already named them, Colin. Those guys played valuable minutes for us last year. So, like I said, it's a weird spot, but I think those type of things are just kind of a wash.
Looking at New Mexico State's defense, they are one of the best in the country when it comes to third down defense. Opponents are only converting 25% of the time on third downs, according to the New Mexico State game notes. So just kind of playing off what you said about third down. The Bearcats converted 7 of 15 on third down against Hawaii. UCF was not the best when it came to third down. Rice was a bit up and down, but it seemed like they improved on third down play against Hawaii. And on the offensive side, at least, the defensive side, they're going to be really good regardless, no matter what down it is. Obviously, some things that the defense needs to work on, like not giving up the big plays, because they gave up that one big pass from Braden Shager of Hawaii that went down the field, and then a couple of plays later they scored a touchdown. But I think that's going to be the biggest matchup is the Sam Houston offense versus the New Mexico State defense on third down or even fourth down if the situation calls for it, because I think this could be a close game.
Yeah, I agree. And New Mexico State's defensive front, it's a bunch of new faces, but um, they've been good and bad. Against Fresno State, not very good. Against SEMA, they were great. Against Liberty, it was very up and down, so it's a lot of conflicting tape. Uh, but on the flip side of things, Sam Houston running the ball has also been very up and down. We liked what we saw against Hawaii, against UCF. Obviously, we did not run the ball very well. And against Rice, I thought we did, pretty decent. I think there were things that we could have done better there. And this O line still has yet to be fully healthy, we think. But um, there's a lot of there's a lot of not mismatches, but there's a lot of just interesting kind of individual battles that this offense is going to have against this Mexico State defense, and really it's all because of Joe Morris, right? But um, it's a different offensive coordinator on our side too, right? So maybe not everything Joe Morris is going to know, kind of what we're going to try to run and whatnot. But yeah, that's definitely going to be the biggest battle, and maybe just to keep the eyes on would be the Sam Houston offense against this New Mexico State defense.
You referred to that Liberty game. If you just to kind of give it a perspective, they held Liberty to just 1 of 11 on third down attempts. By the way, they rank 14th best in the country. Apparently, it's second behind Conference USA. I'm trying to figure out what the other team is in Conference USA. I don't know if it's us or not. I don't think it is because, well, UCF didn't really find themselves in a lot of third downs. But I gotta look further into it. But thing is, Luke, what New Mexico State doesn't have going for them is that, like you said, they have a lot of new faces. They lost their head coach, Jerry Kill. He went to Vanderbilt. I don't even know what position he really has. Is it if it's like an assistance role, kind of like what Warren Sapp did last year for Colorado, where he was just there advising the players, or whatsoever. And who else went to Vanderbilt? Of course, as we all know, Diego Pavia, who is one of the most exciting quarterbacks, in my opinion, to watch in Division I FBS college football. So New Mexico State's expectations this year, it varies. They could be a bowl team. They cannot be. So I think, with head coach Tony Sanchez, I think he has experience. He was a head coach at UNLV for 5 years, so he has that experience as an FBS coach. But he is inheriting a team that is just, looking for its identity at this point.
It is, and when you thought about New Mexico State football the past few years, you thought about Diego Pavia. The dude has been electric. He's had a pretty good start to the season. This year at Vanderbilt, they lost a tough one this past week, but that it is still Vanderbilt, but still really fun player. And Colin, remember this team last year was a 10-win team. I mean, that's impressive. But then you look in this year with all these new faces, there's just a lot of uncertainty, and we in our interview here coming up, we kind of talked off cameras, and um, expectations were just kind of all over the place with New Mexico State. So it's weird seeing Diego Pavia not back there for New Mexico State, but time rolls on, and uh, you just kind of have to go with what you got with the transfer portal being like how it is now.
It's the Conference USA team that's first ahead of New Mexico State, tied with 12th with Iowa's Liberty. So Liberty's defense looks a lot better this year for their own end. But yeah, you know what? While we just mentioned it, let's go ahead and dive straight into that interview. We talked with Adam Young, who is the director of broadcasting. He also does TV play-by-play for New Mexico State. He also does a bit of radio, and he does football, baseball, volleyball, almost all the sports. So let's go ahead and dive straight into that interview right now here on Sam Houston Sports Talk. And of course, before we get to that, be sure you subscribe today for all the Bearcat talk. Here is the Adam Young interview right now. All right, welcome back to the Sam Houston Sports Talk podcast. So let's now welcome in our special guest for this preview podcast for Sam Houston versus New Mexico State. Joining us is Adam Young. He is the New Mexico State Director of Broadcasting and TV play-by-play voice, and also does radio. So most likely, if you're watching an ESPN Plus game for New Mexico State, you're more than likely going to hear this guy right here. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, that's a fair assumption. I call 7 sports, so I don't think I've missed one on TV for us since I've been here. So it's a pretty fair guess. Looking forward to talking with you guys today about Aggie football.
Yeah,
absolutely. You're the voice of Las Cruces.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Adam, we brought you on here, of course. The Aggies are playing the Bearcats in Huntsville. Last time out, these two teams met. The Aggies won pretty good, 27-13. That's actually where I met you officially in person for the first time. But looking back now and then looking back and then looking back now and then it's two totally different teams. It looks like for both sides. Sam Houston, of course, retained a lot of their talent, but for New Mexico State, new head coach and Tony Sanchez, with Jerry Kill going to Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia, the quarterback, going there as well. Just what can you tell us about the outlook of this year's team in Las Cruces?
Well, it was so hard to figure out going into the season, guys, because, we had the third most FBS transfers, lost a lot of players to Power 4 programs, lost a lot of players to Vanderbilt, quite frankly. So with so many new pieces, there was a lot of unknown. Didn't play great the opener against SEMO, but found a way to win the game. And then the way they played for 3.5 quarters at home against Liberty in week 2 was really encouraging. And, should have won that football game. Up 9 with 7.5 minutes left to go. Everything was going well, especially in the first quarter plus. And then things just kind of unraveled offensively. And then the defense was probably on the field too much. And they struggled big time down the stretch in the final 7 minutes against Liberty. And then it kind of spiraled into last week as well. Got blown out at Fresno State. It was 14-0, 2 minutes into the game. So this is, I guess, a wake-up call probably, a gut check. We'll see how they respond this weekend. This is a big football game, I think, for a lot of reasons. Of course, it's a Conference USA game. It's the Conference USA road opener. And then a lot of folks are wondering what's going to be the identity of the team this year and how will they respond from what Tony Sanchez called an embarrassing loss. Fresno State's a really good football team, and New Mexico State saw them in the bowl game last year in Albuquerque. But are they 48 points better than New Mexico State? I think a lot of Aggie fans would say, I hope not. So this week will show a lot. I don't think it's results-based necessarily. Of course, they want to win the football game, but if they really struggle again this week, then there's going to be a lot of fans, of course, frustrated because it kind of goes back to that Liberty game in the second half against Liberty when the offense started to sputter, and it hasn't really picked up since then. So I feel like this week and just really all year, this team's going to go where the quarterback goes and where the offense goes in general. The defense is good enough. The defense has a lot of talent. Joe Morris, the former Sam Houston defensive coordinator, has done a really good job. But there's still a lot of question marks at quarterback. And I think there's a lot of question marks in general on offense with the quarterback, the O-line play, and then the wide receiver play as well.
It's interesting that you said the word gut check. And when you see these teams that lose a lot via transfer portal, graduation, whatever, and they bring in so many new teams, it could be very up and down, right? It can be very different. Why do you think y'all played so competitive against Liberty and just kind of got embarrassed against Fresno?
Offense, I mean, they moved the football in the first quarter plus. They built a pretty sizable two-score lead against Liberty, and then on defense, they held Liberty to field goals, which is hard to do. I mean, Kaden Salter, I think, is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. He couldn't really get going. The run game of Liberty, which is one of the best in the country, really struggled in that first half and really for three quarters. And then I just feel like the defense was on the field too much. I mean, the offense was 3 and out consistently, punting consistently after really the first possession in the second quarter. And then you get into a 9-point game with 7.5 left, and Liberty's offense looked a lot better, and give a lot of credit to Liberty's offense. It's extremely talented, but if you're New Mexico State defensively, it's almost impossible to keep Liberty in check offensively for 3 full quarters. And that was the task at hand. And, a 9-point lead turned into a loss at home, and Liberty took their first lead the entire game with a minute left. I don't think that loss carried into last week against Fresno. I just think the start against Fresno, it just snowballed on you. It was 14-0, and then the offense had really good field position 3 times when it was 14-0 to make it a 1-score game, and just couldn't get anything going offensively. So the running back room is really good, and we saw that for a little while against Liberty. We saw that against SEMO in the opener. Didn't see it against Fresno State, and until the quarterback situation gets better, the running back room is not going to be able to take that next step that they can. There's some injuries in the offensive line that has really hurt. It's an experienced offensive line, but they're missing their best offensive lineman, their left tackle, Shiaz Pete, who's on numerous watch lists, and he's probably out for a couple more weeks, and he hasn't played yet this year. So, an experienced group on the O-line turned into somewhat more of an inexperienced group on the offensive line because of the injury to Pete. So they're still trying to figure it out, but slow starts for this program the last 2 years during bowl years, it's been the theme. 2 years ago, they started 1-5. Last year, they started 1-2, and they got better as the year went on. So relatively new coaching staff, a couple of holdovers, new head coach, of course. Can they improve week to week like the team did the last 2 weeks or the last 2 years? That's a big question.
What are some skill position players on the offensive side of the ball that we need to look out for, and they also need to step up if New Mexico State wants to come out of Huntsville with a win?
Yeah, the running back room is really good. Seth McGowan's had a great first couple of weeks, played great against SEMO. He's a big reason why they won that game, and then had a good game against Liberty and had some moments against Fresno State. Monte Watkins, who was around a year ago, probably the fastest guy on the team, big time speed, had an explosive play against Liberty. And Tony Sanchez said at our radio show Monday night, they had no explosive plays last week. And that's key this week, is to get some of those like they did against Liberty with both Monte Watkins and also McGowan as well. So the running back room is kind of where I start. The wide receiver room has struggled a little bit. Cordell Davids, the go-to receiver, he's been here for 3 years now. Super talented. He'll get the majority of the targets, but they also need some other players to step up as well if that passing game is going to improve. In that quarterback room, guys, it's Santino Marucci right now and then Parker Awad, and they're completely different players. So, a lot of times I think it's going to depend on who's in the game. We'll see if they play 2 quarterbacks this weekend. We'll see who starts. That's a question as well going into this weekend. But if they get that quarterback room right, it's going to help out the receivers, the running backs, the offensive line, just everybody in general.
Defensively, or for y'all, our offense, right? Sam's offense has had some huge explosive plays against the G5 teams. I know New Mexico State has kind of struggled with that. Is there any sense of urgency, especially with last week against Fresno, Colin, I don't know if you saw it. They forced a fumble, and then Fresno State picked it up and ran for like another 60 yards. It was very bizarre.
Yeah.
What can New Mexico State do to stop that?
Yeah, that was a fortuitous bounce. I mean, I think that changed a lot of the complexion of the game because that made it 14-0 right after. The first series of the game, Dylan Early gets caught peeking in the secondary, and Fresno State takes it in for a touchdown. Tony Sanchez said Monday night that can't happen. But I think overall, I go back to the SEMO game. They limited explosive plays outside of one. Liberty didn't have really any big plays until inside the 8-minute mark in the fourth, and then the first play against Fresno State. Yeah, that really stung. I like this defense a lot. It's older. I think it's still meshing. New coordinator, a lot of new pieces. I mean, they lost their entire line. Their top linebacker, New Mexico State's from last 2 years, is at Arizona State and crushing it. The top guy in the secondary is one of the top tacklers in the country at Arizona State. So you're filling these pieces of consistent players from the last year, the last 2 years, and they played, a good amount of football, but they haven't played a good amount of football together. So I'm hopeful that, those explosion plays that we've seen a little bit the last couple of weeks, that'll get corrected as they play more football together. But we'll see. That's going to be a huge part of the game. Tony Sanchez said earlier this week, explosive plays and then turnovers, winning that turnover battle and not having critical errors in the turnover department. That really come back to hurt you like they did against Liberty 2 weeks ago.
You mentioned the defense. Just Joe Morris, former Sam Houston DC, came in. Just what have you seen from your perspective? What kind of impact he has had, along with Jared Hensley?
Huge impact. I think Jared, had his hands full a little bit too at linebacker. They lost Keyshawn Elliott from last year, and Keyshawn was 100 plus tackles a year ago, and I feel like he's done a really good job of developing the guys that were in the room and then the guys that were added in the transfer portal as well. I love what Joe Morris has done defensively. I love watching his defense when he was at Sam Houston. You guys saw all the games last year. I feel like if they could have had any offense, that season could have been totally different because their defense was keeping them in games, especially that BYU game last year. That probably jumps out more than any other game a year ago. And then the halftime adjustments he made here a year ago when it was a blowout, and then New Mexico State couldn't move the football in the second half. And if Sam Houston, finds a couple more plays offensively, that game gets a little more interesting than maybe what it was down the stretch. So he's experienced. I mean, you guys know it. His guys play hard for him. He puts them in the right position to have success, and then they have to do the rest. But the defense has been encouraging. I think it's hard to grade the defense 3 games in because they've been put in tougher spots due to very quick 3-and-out possessions on offense. And then, if you're a guy on defense and you get to the fourth quarter and you've been on that field a ton because the offense just can't stay on the field for a long period of time, it's going to wear on you. And I think they're still building that depth as well that takes time to build, especially with so many new players. So, I mean, I've been extremely impressed by him and Jared as well, and what they've done. And, if the offense can start to play better, I think we're going to see the numbers even improve more defensively.
You're preaching to the choir right here. On our radio show last year, we would always talk about how great this defense was. And it was, I mean, you look at the Liberty game, very similar situation where we were probably the better team against Liberty last week or last year and just couldn't pull it out. I kind of missed my final question. I want to ask you about when your preseason expectations were and now kind of what they are now, looking forward into the season. Has that changed a little bit? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Kind of where are you at on that?
It was so hard to predict, guys. I mean, I think if you ask one person, they would say, I predict 7 or 8 wins. Some people thought this could still be a 10-win football team. And other people said they have too many new pieces. They're going to struggle. I think it's way too early. And part of that answer for me is what happened the last 2 years. 2 years ago, this football team was 0-4 and then 1-5. And nobody was thinking bowl game. And then they go to a bowl game. They win the bowl game in Detroit. And there was some momentum into last year. Last year, expectations were there. People were shocked they were 1-2. They suffered a really bad loss at Hawaii for that second loss, and I still don't know how they lost the game. But Hawaii took their first lead in the final seconds of the game, And at that point, I said, this could be demoralizing. And then they rattled off 8 wins in a row at one point. They got better as the year went on. So if this team can get better as the year goes on, there's more than enough talent in the room. And I think Conference USA might even be more wide open this year than it was the last year. Whereas last year, I think there was a little more parity maybe than there is right now. So, we'll see. I mean, I think this week's really important. The hard part of their schedule is kind of behind them right now. You have Liberty and then Fresno State. That's going to be their hardest 2-game stretch of the year. I was talking about this earlier week. I feel like Sam Houston's better than people expected. Jacksonville State is probably worse than people expected. Maybe Liberty, as it looks right now, isn't as good as people thought they would be. UTEP kind of hung around a little bit last week, and New Mexico State should have won that football game 2 weeks ago. So there's a lot of football left, and I think the schedule is favorable the rest of the way. But my expectations going into it, I thought they would make a bowl game, and I still think they will. I just, there just has to be improvement, and it just goes back to quarterback play. And if they can have solid quarterback play, they're going to be just fine.
All right, I have a quick little fun question here. We saw all the movement from the Mountain West to the Pac-12. Is there any kind of rumors going around that New Mexico State might check out of the CUSA and head out to the Mountain West?
I mean, I've heard rumors, but it's through social media. It's nobody, in the building here. Mario Mocha, our athletics director, who's probably as open of an AD as there is. We had him on our radio coaches show every Monday night, and he talked about it this week. He said, obviously we'd be stupid not to pick up the phone if anybody calls, regardless of conference. But man, they're in a good spot. And I think folks around here remember when the spot wasn't as pretty after the Sun Belt days and when they were independent in football. So, I mean, that's a question, I think, for people that make way more money than I do. But I mean, I think if you're on social media, you see people bringing up New Mexico State, obviously, which is good. I think the attractiveness of football now, that wasn't the case after the Sun Belt days. I think if football was playing this well, as far as the last 2-year stretch, when they were in the Sun Belt, they would have still been in the Sun Belt. But football was struggling, and then Jerry Kill comes in and figures things out. And it's a great league. I'm excited for the future of the league. I'm very familiar with Missouri State. I'm from the Midwest, and I think that's a great ad. Delaware coming in. It's at this point, travel's travel, right? I mean, everybody's going all over the place anyway. So, I mean, that's probably a question for the people that are way higher up than I. But Mario did address it at our coaches show, and he talked about he's not shying away from it. But I think it's good that people are actually bringing you up. I think that's a good thing. This conference realignment stuff is nuts. I mean, it changes daily, so it could change next week. We just, who knows who's going to be in what league this time next year.
I got a fun one before I get to my final question. Just can there's been a lot of talk about how the Power Four, or whatever they're called these days, wants to try to separate from the Group of Five. But it seems like a lot of people just don't understand that that Group of Five has really good football. And I think the one result that I sometimes people keep talking about is when New Mexico State went to Auburn and just, I mean, if for lack of a better term, just whooped them. And it was one of the most impressive wins of the college football season last year. I don't know if you were there or not, but just kind of what was it like from your perspective on your side of things, and how that win could possibly contribute to the bigger picture to keep the Group of Five on the same level as the Power Four?
It was a huge deal. And I'll never forget post-game on TV on SEC Network, Jerry Kill telling the reporter, we dominated Auburn at the line of scrimmage. And to think about that, that's usually where you lose the battle, right? If you're a Group of Five going into a Power Five, sometimes you have some skilled players who can play at that level. But, I mean, it's hard to keep the line away from the quarterback. And usually your offensive line gets beat up pretty good. And our offensive line dominated the D-line for Auburn. And that team went into that game expecting to win the game. And I think so often if you go into a P4 program, you're thinking, okay, let's just not get hurt. Let's just get out of here, collect a paycheck, move on to next week. We got a conference game. And I don't know what Jerry Kill said to get them to believe that they were going to go in there and beat Auburn, but they certainly believed it. And they also had enough guys that have probably played at that level too. Maybe they had a chip on their shoulder as well, or got, turned away by a program like Auburn as well. So it's a huge deal. Toledo kind of pounding Mississippi State a week ago. It's a big deal. The MAC, over the SEC in convincing fashion on the road. So it proves that, that programs like New Mexico State and like Toledo can play with an SEC program. But I'll tell you what, guys, it's tough, like with the transfer portal nowadays. I mean, our athletics director has me compile a list of all the guys that transferred away, where they're at, what they're doing. We had 50 guys transfer since December, and they weren't unhappy here. They just got offers to go play somewhere else, and coaching change and all those factors. It's tough. I mean, if guys have success, you're like, oh, they might be going, to Vanderbilt next year or Auburn next year or wherever, So, it's harder to keep those high level players. And that team last year that New Mexico State had assembled was special. And it showed when they went into Auburn and won by 21 points and shocked the entire world with how they did it.
To end off this special guest appearance by Adam Young joining us on Sam Houston Sports Talk. Adam, just circling back, just to end it off, what are going to be the keys for New Mexico State to come out of Hunts Vegas with the win?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of repeat what Tony Sanchez had for his keys earlier this week. Win the turnover battle. I think that's coach speak. Every coach will tell you every week when you ask keys to the game, win the turnover battle. Limit explosion plays, and then also get some explosion plays on offense. They didn't have any last week. And then quarterback play. It's a question going into the week. Will it be Parker Awad? Will it be Santino Marucci? And can Parker play better? And Santino, who only had one pass a week ago, his season debut, can he do what he did at times at Wake Forest? And the reason why Santino's been behind the eight ball a little bit is he came after spring ball. We talked about the transfer portal. He came after spring ball, so he's still learning the offense. And if he does play, can he make the correct decisions, the correct reads, and move the football down the field? I do think, guys, if they can find a way to score 20, 25 points, the defense will be able to do their job enough to make it a game late in the fourth quarter. But the offense just has to be better.
I'd like to thank Adam Young for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at YoungPBP. And like I said, if you are ever tuning into a New Mexico State volleyball, baseball, football, basketball game, whatever you on ESPN Plus or even on radio, you will most likely be hearing that man's voice right there. Adam, really appreciate you jumping on. Thank you for taking the time.
All right, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you to Adam Young once again for joining us here on Sam Houston Sports Talk. Gave us a lot of good info and a lot of insight and some insight on New Mexico State and their place when it comes to potential conference realignment. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I'll just kind of touch on that a little bit, Luke. It's two things happened. Sacramento State, apparently the politicians in that area want to try to get them into the Pac-12. And just recently, the American could be targeting the Air Force Falcons. I mean, could this mean potentially that the Mountain West could be in danger of collapsing? Or turning, or you kind of made this point. Maybe if not just collapse, but turn into the WAC.
Yeah, it is interesting, Colin. Those are our CBS Sports Network buddies. Us, Conference USA, and the Mountain West are both some of the big time conference or CBSSN, I guess you could say. Mates there. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen people in the Pac-12 saying they try to go get Memphis. I've seen UTEP. I would assume the Mountain West is going to try to dip into Texas here at some point. It just kind of makes sense, but for them, I don't know if Texas State would go to the Mountain West. I just kind of view the Mountain West and the Sun Belt as pretty even, especially with all these teams they're going to be losing. Now probably the Sun Belt more. Conference alignment is just nuts, and
It's a
the whole
doozy.
geographic scene is just it's gone.
It's a doozy. The only conferences that make sense are the Sun Belt, Conference USA because it literally has USA in it, and the Southland. And I guess you could say the Northeast Conference as well. The A10, I forgot the one team that's not technically on the Atlantic, but it is what it is. And the MAC, you got
Dayton.
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 That's right. And the MAC would have been accurate as well. Man, the gun club's going crazy today. But the MAC would make sense if it wasn't for UMass, because that's definitely not Middle America.
Well, is it Middle America? I thought it was Mid Atlantic.
I thought it was Middle America. I thought it was Middle America.
Maybe Mid Atlantic is the MAAC.
The MAC.
Yeah, Mid American. You're right. You're right.
American. I was right. Okay.
Yeah,
But anyway,
you know what you're doing.
yeah, I guess so. But anyway, that's enough conference realignment talk because we could talk for hours about that. Let's go ahead and dive straight into our keys and predictions for Sam Houston versus New Mexico State. Adam Young gave his keys to how New Mexico State can take the win, but Luca, here's the thing for Sam Houston. They're probably going to be expecting another good crowd. It's homecoming, celebrating 100 years of Orange and White. Hopefully they get the attendance issues fixed, like with the lines, the waters at halftime. Hopefully they get those fixed. They did put out a statement on the athletic social media accounts on all the outlets. So I'm confident they can get that fixed. So I think the crowd's going to be another big thing. But besides that, because that's kind of an easy point to make, Luke, I'll let you go first this week. What are your keys for Sam Houston to get back-to-back wins?
Yeah, obviously, going up against a familiar face there, defensive coordinator, a few pieces on the back end. That's going to be kind of a challenge for Sam Houston to navigate, and I'd like to see kind of the run game really pick it up. I thought we did a lot of good things there against Hawaii. Coach Keeler's talked about getting her bot check a little bit more involved. Gentry has been a little gimpy, I think, this week and from the last game against Hawaii. I think he'll be fine, but seeing Ducker run pretty well. I like to get the run game a little bit more involved. Of course, that starts up front, but involving those guys a bit more, and I think we just get more target share to Ife, Noah, and Quavez Humphreys. I mean, these three guys are three horses that I think you can really rely on to get through. And Simeon Evans has been probably our second best receiver this year. So just getting those guys the ball more. Stay balanced. I thought we've stayed super balanced throughout this year. I think keep doing that. Learn kind of what New Mexico State did really well against Liberty, and that was getting ahead early and playing well from ahead up until that third quarter. I think we gotta jump on that cat first and pounce a little bit and keep the crowd behind us. Collin, the crowd was great against Hawaii, and you can tell that this team fed off that crowd for a large portion of this game. So I think if you get the crowd involved early, homecoming, you cannot lose on homecoming. Like you said, 100 years of Orange and White. It's a weird spot for both teams right here, but those are the keys. You got to get the crowd behind you early, stay balanced on offense, and run the ball with a little bit more efficiency than the previous weeks.
I'm going to look at more the defensive side of things. I think the offense will be just fine for the most part. We know about how New Mexico State's quarterback issues. It's either going to be Santonio Marucci or Parker Awad, with Deuce Hogan going down for the rest of the year with a broken collarbone. So we don't know we don't know at the moment who's going to be starting under center for the Aggies. It's going to be it's most likely going to possibly be Santino Marucci. I think the secondary will do their job. We're not the defense is not going to have Davion Armstead for the second straight week. So look at Iman Allen to be back at that corner, be back at Armstead's corner spot. But I thought Iman did a tremendous job either way in Armstead's place. So hopefully Armstead. It sounds like Armstead will most likely be back for Texas State. We do need him against Texas State. He's a guy you need out there for those big games. But I'm gonna look more towards the interior, especially on the edge rusher. You asked me what's a player that I would like to see step up a bit more, and I said Isaiah Nixon. I think they need to try to get in there more. I think Bryson Hayes has done his job. Kendrick DeJour, you know how much I like him, but I think Isaiah Nixon needs to. I think Isaiah Nixon just needs to get going. I think he will be. I think he'll be fine. You made that point. He started off a bit slow last year. I think as the season goes on, it will be okay. But I think there's a chip on Sam Houston's shoulders a little bit because they want to try to keep performing. I'm pretty sure they want to try to keep performing really good against these teams in front of big crowds to get more people to go out there and feed off that energy. You got a point to make before I finish?
Well, Colin, I have a question.
Sure.
We're talking about New Mexico State's offense, right? Yeah. Running the ball, they have a few good backs.
They do.
When you look at our defense, is this a game that you really try to load up the box and make whoever's starting at quarterback throw the ball against you, especially with your kind of experienced DBs out there in the back end, or do you kind of play a more simpler approach and take that away and make them just run the ball against you?
I don't think you try to do too much. I think you should stick to what's working. But I will say I would love for them to. I would be fine with just having 7 guys in the box. I'd be just fine with that. But what I do want to see is a good amount of blitz packages because you're going up. You're probably going to be going up against Awad or Marucci, guys that don't have much experience. Especially against a defense like Sam Houston's. One thing I liked about Cassidy Coach Cassidy when he was the defensive coordinator at Abilene Christian was his way of utilizing certain blitz packages and always mixing it up. I think we could see Jalen Jimerson a lot more on the blitz packages, being that nickel blitz. We could even see Caleb Weaver coming from the strong side and blitzing, because if you. Yeah, I'm making like a more recent example, but you look at what the Texans did against Caleb Williams on Sunday Night Football. They dropped it back. It gave Williams more time to read where to go. But if you put pressure on a quarterback that hasn't played a lot, you're gonna make their lives a living hell, and they're gonna be scrambling and trying to make big plays, but then. If you make them try to make the big plays, they're most likely gonna make a mistake. That's kind of how I see it. I just hope I think we could see a lot of good mix of the blitz packages, but overall the point is don't oversimplify it. Stick to what's working.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was probably too much of a long drawn out answer. I mean, simply like I said, don't oversimplify it on defense. On offense. You kind of took the same points from me. The O-line looked much better against Hawaii, allowing 0 sacks. I would say for Watson again, just keep improving. He only made like 1 bad throw, and that was the interception on the run rolling to his right. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I see things at the moment.
Yeah. I think I'd like to see maybe just loading the box a little bit from that stance, but I love your idea with sending some blitzes and maybe just disguising a few coverages just to make the quarterback, an experienced quarterback, either one. Santino Marucci, what a name, first of all. Just not really a football name that you think of, but there you are, quarterback. Just kind of make either one of them really think it through and putting them in uncomfortable spots. I completely agree with that. That's what teams did to Shoemaker last year. and it worked, right? So it's a very similar kind of situation there. Yeah, I agree.
And thus, my prediction as is the line currently sits at 14 points flat in Sam Houston's favor, I believe. And Luke, you're shaking your head. Why don't you let the audience know why you're shaking your head?
On the line last week at home against Hawaii was 3.5. This week, now I saw it at one point. It was 14.5. Some books had it at 15. Colin, this is a weird spot. Do I think Hawaii is 10 points or 12 points better, multiple score, two touchdowns better than New Mexico State? I do not. I think New Mexico State's probably a better team than Hawaii, I think. Um, this is a weird spot. I like Sam Houston's chances to win this game. 14 points, I think it's a little much. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 28-13.
All right, 28-13. Sam Houston win?
Sam Houston.
Okay. I didn't know if you were gonna make this. I didn't know if you were gonna, you know, keep up the same routine now. I guess we're now just gonna be both picking Sam Houston again because I'm going with the Bearcats as well. I think it's Conference USA opener. Like I said, chip on their shoulder to win in front of a potentially large crowd once again on homecoming. And I'm gonna keep it close. I'm gonna have a little closer result. I'm going to say 27-23. I think we're I mean, I hope I'm wrong. Hopefully it's not going to be that close. But I think we're in for a really good matchup between these two sides that are, I mean, New Mexico State trying to find their new identity, but Sam Houston trying to establish momentum for not just the rest of the season, but also heading towards Texas State.
Yeah, I'm not picking against Sam Houston much more here on the podcast, Colin. I kind of got ripped up there on a Twitter space one night.
Oh, yes, you did, and you know it.
With Rice, yeah, with the whole Rice situation. So I like having the Sam Houston Burners on my side, not against me. Friendly fire is never a fun thing. No, but it's just a weird spot, and I think kind of everyone agrees with this. I think Sam Houston might be getting a little too much value now coming off the Hawaii win. But that being said, this team has not been used to really play in front of a huge crowd. And I think if the crowd shows up again like they did, anything can happen, right? So I think Sam Houston's, we are a huge favorite in this game for a reason. That's why I like us, but just too many points there to be too comfortable with.
Well, could it be also because the Aggies got whooped by Fresno State 48-0?
Maybe so, and usually, I'm not in Vegas or anything, but usually, those guys that create the lines, they know so much, and I feel like those type of things don't impact, especially because some of those scores against Fresno. I talked about it in the interview. Literally, it was the second, I think, offensive drive for New Mexico State. They had the ball. Maybe it was the first offensive drive. They had the ball. They were run up the middle. It would have been a first down. Fumbles it. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Fresno has the ball. Fresno is running it for a first down. New Mexico State jars the ball loose. Then Fresno picks it up and runs for another 60 yards. Nearly, they would go on to score a touchdown right there. Just a few too many plays like that where it's hard to kind of come up with that type of thing. And I'm not an expert or anything, but I don't know. It's just a weird spot.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we'll see what happens this Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time. New Mexico State is in Mountain Time, so they have a bit of an earlier start in their perspective, for this game. Well, if you are going to the game, it's the same theme this time. Hashtag Pack Bowers. Let's see if we can do it again. Let's see if the attendance record was disputed for like a good bit. Let's see if we can actually break the record. Let's see if what the show out is. I still think we're going to see a great crowd. I think I'm not too sure if there's any post game entertainment, but I know a lot of former Bearcat players are going to be showing up. Davion Davis is going to be there, and I think a couple of other notable Bearcat alumni are going to be there as well for this game for homecoming, and it is also the Conference USA home opener, not home opener, but just opener in general for the conference, where the Bearcats only won 3 games last year in conference play. I mean 3 games overall, and they're already 1 win away, Luke, from not just being halfway to a bowl game, but also matching their win total from last year. But that'll do it for us here at Sam Houston Sports Talk. That's Luke Scott. I'm Collin Neill saying so long for now. Be sure you like and subscribe to Sam Houston Sports Talk today. Follow us on all of our social media outlets on Twitter / X, Facebook, and Instagram. We'll have more stuff coming out. Y'all take it easy. And as always, eat 'em up, cats.
Eat 'em up.